What's a not suitable for work fact about history that we don't get to hear too often? In ancient Egypt, soldiers proved their battle prowess by presenting the severed penises of their slaughtered enemies. Traditionally, severed hands were presented, but in 1182 BC Libyans and other allies invaded Egypt and were defeated by the army of Ramses III, and Ramses suspected that some soldiers were claiming extra credit by presenting the hands of women as well as the male soldiers. So he demanded penises instead. His victory inscriptions mention 12,535 foreskins and hands, and has images of the piles of the body parts at the Medinet Habu mortuary temple. We won the battle. Dicks or it didn't happen. All the documentaries you see about hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt neatly avoid showing you the fertility rites where the pharaoh's phallus is inseminating the land. Edit. This is my most upvoted comment on Reddit ever, and the stack of awards was totally unexpected. It's not that they have any material value, it does show a measure of appreciation, and I am humbled by your kindness. Thank you very much, all you wonderful people. There is a lot of semen in Egyptian mythology, people just seem to ignore it. Horus and Set were at each other at all times. Apparently, according to prophecy, Horus would dethrone/kill Set, to the point that they would try to prove their superiority by seeing who could get their semen inside the other. Set, somehow, got to have the butt sex with Horus, but, somehow, Horus dodged the shot at the end. Horus simply jerked off into Set's bowl of salad. Thanks for the vagina, guys. Wank like an Egyptian. Machiavelli wrote a letter to his friend about how he effed a prostitute, then threw up all over her when the lights came on, because she was so ugly. I was now completely terrified. However, since I was alone with her in the dark, I gave her a good hump. Even though I found her thighs flabby, her genitals greasy and her breath stinking a bit, my lust was so desperate that I went ahead and gave it to her anyway. When their liaison was over, Machiavelli managed to find a lamp and was able to shine a light on the woman. My God, she was so ugly that I almost dropped dead. A tuft of hair, half white and half black, the top of her head was bald, which allowed you to see several lice taking a stroll. Her eyebrows were full of nits, one eye looked down and the other up. Her tear ducts were full of mucus. Her nose was twisted into a peculiar shape, the nostrils were full of snot and one of them was half missing. Her mouth looked like Lorenzo de Medici's, twisted on one side and drooling since she had no teeth to keep the saliva in her mouth. Her lip was covered with a thin but rather long mustache. When the woman spoke to him, Machiavelli was struck by her stinking breath and, I heaved so much that I vomited all over her. Web link. Post-nut clarity hit like a truck. His description reads like a Ren and Stimpy close-up. In 1488, an Italian noblewoman, Caterina Sforza-Riario, locked herself in a castle to save herself from her enemies. Her enemies managed to capture her children and threatened to kill them if she wouldn't surrender. She climbed on ramparts, lifted her skirt to expose her female parts and shouted, "Fools! Don't you see that I can make myself more children?" I remember this exact sequence in Assassin's Creed 2. Her descendants found their way into the current British and Spanish royal families. Whenever I watch historical dramas about people fighting over thrones and whatnot, I look up everyone's descendants to see who won in the long term. From the 13th to the 15th of February, the Romans celebrated Lupercalia, Roman precursor of Valentine's Day, which was a festival of love and fertility. Priests would sacrifice a goat and then cut the goat skin into pieces. Part of this they would wear on their heads, and other parts were cut into thongs. The men would then run around the city of Rome naked, hitting as many women with these thongs as they possibly could. Being hit would help with pregnancy or becoming pregnant. So depending on what they wanted, the women would either deliberately stand in the way of the men, or try to run away while pretty much everyone was naked. In another part of the festivities, men would draw names of women from a jar, and the goal was that they'd stay together for the duration of the festival. This would often result in a lot of, intercourse, and sometimes people actually fell in love and got married after they met during Lupercalia. We really watered that tradition down. Damn shame. Fun fact, in 44 BC, one of the runners was sitting consul Mark Antony. So he was running around buck naked slapping women a month before the Senate penetrated Caesar 23 times? Yes. King Tut's first wife was his half-sister. But she also may have been his full sister and even at one point may have been his stepmother. If you think that's bad, which it is, look into the Ptolemy family. Tree isn't the right word, more pretzel. Less pretzel, more wicker basket. Incest was actually encouraged in ancient Egypt as in many aristocracies to keep the bloodline pure. Moreover, if there were twins where one was a boy and one was a girl, they were married at birth because it was assumed that they must have banged in the womb. Hence why Tut had a club foot and such a short life. Exactly. Same case for a lot of medieval European aristocratic families as well. They didn't go for straight-up sibling incest but usually kept it to the cousins, but over the years that led to problems for a lot of them. It's why the Habsburgs all look like confused Lord Frollo potatoes. Witches were more often mutilated than actually burned. Fun fact, none of the witches at Salem were burned at the stake. All were hanged and one man was crushed with stones. Burning was more of a European thing. Hangings were all the rage here in the colonies. Were they trying to find spare lumber to build a bridge? Who are you, so wise in the ways of science? A lot of people banged in the White House on the day of Andrew Jackson's inauguration. Why? There was a big party and hey, how many times are you going to have that opportunity? It was just a regular house before then. Cheaper than hiring painters. In ancient Egypt they held a fertility festival each year and at this festival it was the pharaoh's responsibility to strip down and jerk off into the Nile. Edit. Should also mention that once the pharaoh had finished, men in the crowd were encouraged to step forward and join in, so once a year the Nile River literally tuned into a massive public circle jerk. According to their mythology, the Nile was created when one of the gods jerked off. It's a river of God's spooge. Similar to Milky Way. According to Greek mythology, it was created when Hera was breastfeeding Hercules. Apparently, he was a nip biter, and clamped down so hard, she had to violently pull him off from her tit and accidentally squirted her milk around. Edit. Some context, yes, for all of you who are confused because Hera hated Hercules, Zeus sneaked up on Hera when she was asleep and allowed Hercules to suck on her breast, hoping that her breast milk would give him godlike powers. Hera woke up because he was biting her nipple, and she violently pushed him off, squirting the milk. Edit 2, as if Zeus effed my inbox itself. R.I.P. inbox. Good luck, Cleo. Maybe the pharaohs had a ceremonial dick to jack, like how Hatshepsut wore a fake beard? The deadliest female serial killer in U.S. history had murdered 35 people with an axe by the time she was 18 years old. Name? Clementine Barnabet, member of a cult called the Church of Sacrifice. Preferred murdering several family members at once, often decapitating them. Not so fun fact, she was out of prison before she was 30 and never seen again. I'd rather not know what her actual body count was. What? It's okay though, she was sentenced to jail at 18 in 1912, so I'd say she's long gone by now. Hopefully. This just in. A 126-year-old woman was arrested today for being mean to a man, saying if I still had my strength, you'd be toast and a foot shorter. Edit. Thank you for the silver. Dear Diary, my teen unc's bullcrap now has a body count. Edit. I needed a smile yesterday. And you guys loved my movie quote. Thanks. How about the time that NASA funded a study about dolphin communication that ended with one researcher giving a dolphin that was high on LSD a handjob? Web link. Didn't it fall in love with the woman? Then when the research was stopped, the dolphin committed suicide by swimming to the bottom of the tank and not coming back up. That's what I've heard. From the article, I got that phone call from John Lilly, she recalls. John called me himself to tell me. He said Peter had committed suicide. Rick O'Barry corroborates the use of this word. Dolphins are not automatic air breathers like we are, he explains. Every breath is a conscious effort. If life becomes too unbearable, the dolphins just take a breath and they sink to the bottom. They don't take the next breath. Andy Williamson puts Peter's death down to a broken heart, brought on by a separation from Lavat that he didn't understand. Margaret could rationalize it, but when she left, could Peter? Here's the love of his life gone. Why is this thread making me sad? It started so well with dick and farts. But of course there had to be a suicidal dolphin. It started so well with dick and farts. But of course there had to be a suicidal dolphin. /r/ brand new sentence, Reddit link. This is legitimately sad. Poor dolphin, man. So long, and thanks for all the fish LSD and handjobs. When Jadwiga, the king of Poland, medieval Poland referred to every ruler as king regardless of gender, was considering a marriage proposal from the Grand Duke of Lithuania, a chief concern among her court was that said duke was rumored to have massive genitals to the point that they would kill his wife on their wedding night. 2 of her counselors volunteered to travel to Lithuania to try and discover the truth of these rumors, which naturally meant they would watch the duke as he bathed. They returned and happily reported that not only weren't the duke's genitals fatally large, they were in fact a tad smaller than average, so nothing to worry about. Thus Poland and Lithuania were united, and the rest is history. Edit. The above omission, and the story I got several years ago from a book by James Michener. The book itself is a novel, but the historical events described therein are accurate based on his research as far as I'm aware. Web link. Wonder who started that rumor. Probably the guy that was hitting on Jadwiga. Guys, stop laughing, I didn't marry her cause the other dude had smaller dick. I was in the pool, Grand Duke of Lithuania. So the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth only happened because the Duke of Lithuania had a slightly small peen? Oof. Maybe he was a grower, not a shower? During wartime some armies would wipe crap on their spears so that when they stabbed / enemies they'd get that extra poison damage. In medieval times, they would sling dead animals via catapult to spread disease, which was devastating in those times due to lack of proper medicine. It seems biological warfare was the world's actual first weapon of mass destruction. Edit. Thanks for Blobby Seal Award. I learned about this in a documentary called Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Monty Python does wonderfully informative documentaries. Try and catch the one on the Roman occupation of the Middle East, which uses the life of an ordinary man called Brian to illustrate the benefits and pitfalls of said occupation. Very enlightening. When Catherine Howard, the 5th wife of Henry VIII, was taken from Sion Abbey to the Tower of London to prepare for her execution, she sailed in a barge down the River Thames. She passed under London Bridge, where the severed heads of her alleged lovers Thomas Culpeper and Francis Derham were waiting for her, displayed on spikes, rotting and picked at by birds. Henry VIII was spite-made man. Pope, I will not grant you an annulment. Henry, F you. Pope, what are you going to do, make your own church? Henry, eyes widen. The author of Frankenstein lost her virginity on top of her mum's grave. It was a graveyard smash. Web link. Mary Shelley, goth legend. But terrible funeral etiquette. Remember how you used to say over my dead body, mother? They call it mourning wood for a reason. I know people who've done it on top of Mary Shelley's grave. Her grave is quite close to nightclubs in Bournemouth. It's how she would have wanted it. Mozart was into scat humor. Like, YouTube link. He also effed his best friend's daughter and would later marry her, all because his best friend wouldn't marry him. The original Jacob from Twilight. Could this be history's biggest FU? Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.